Every story leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves.
Tonight, 4 true home invasion stories. These aren't the kind you usually hear about. No one kicks in a door. No one screams for help. In most of these, the person didn't even know someone was inside until it was too late. These are all real accounts, submitted by real people. The lights are on, the doors are locked, and none of that matters. Our first story tonight was submitted by someone who came home from a short trip and found something that didn't add up. It's not the most violent story I've covered, but the implications of it are deeply unsettling. Sometimes what you don't see is worse than what you do. The kitchen smelled like someone else's cigarettes. I don't smoke. I never have. I'd been away for 3 days visiting my parents in Ohio, and when I came home to my apartment in Columbus that Sunday night, the first thing that hit me was that stale, unmistakable smell of tobacco hanging in the air like it had been there for hours. My apartment is a second-floor unit in a quiet complex off Indianola Avenue. Nothing special. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A sliding glass door that opens onto a narrow balcony overlooking the parking lot. The complex is mostly grad students and young professionals. It's the kind of place where nothing happens. That's why I chose it. I set my bag down by the front door and just stood there. The smell was strongest in the kitchen. I checked the stove, the trash can, the window. Everything was closed. Everything was locked. I told myself maybe it had come through the vents from a neighbor's unit. That made sense. I let it go, but then I noticed the chair. I have a small dining table with 2 chairs, and one of them was pulled out and angled toward the sliding glass door. Not how I'd left it. I'm particular about that. I always push both chairs in before I leave. It's one of those things I do without thinking. I walked over and pushed the chair back in. That's when I saw the sliding door was unlocked. The little latch at the base was flipped up. I stared at it for a long time. I always lock that door. Always. I checked it twice before I left for Ohio. I remember because I'd had a package stolen off my doorstep the month before, and I'd gotten paranoid about security. I locked it and checked the rest of the apartment. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved. My laptop was still on my desk. My TV was still on the wall. I checked the closets, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Empty. I was alone. I tried to sleep that night, but couldn't shake the feeling. Around 2 in the morning, I got up to get water and noticed something I'd missed earlier. On the kitchen counter near the sink, there was a faint ring. A circular stain like a mug or a glass had been sitting there. I don't leave dishes on the counter. I'd cleaned everything before I left. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I asked the apartment office if maintenance had been in my unit while I was gone. They said no. I asked my neighbor across the hall if she'd seen anyone near my door. She said she hadn't been paying attention. 2 weeks later, I was doing laundry in the shared basement and ran into another tenant who lived on the first floor directly below me. We got to talking, and I mentioned the cigarette smell. He got quiet and said he'd been meaning to tell me something. He said the week I was gone, he'd heard footsteps above him, not just passing through, pacing back and forth slowly for hours. He said it happened 2 nights in a row. Someone had been living in my apartment while I was gone. They had sat in my chair, drank from my glasses, smoked their cigarettes, and walked my hallway in the dark. And somehow, they had locked the front door behind them when they left but forgotten the slider. I moved out a month later. The thing that still keeps me up at night isn't the break-in itself. It's that I never figured out how they got in. The front door showed no signs of forced entry. The slider was 12 feet off the ground, and the apartment office swore no one had requested a spare key. Someone had a way into my home that I never found. And for all I know, they still do. The idea that someone could come and go from your home without you ever knowing, that one's hard to shake. But this next story takes it a step further. This person did know someone was inside because they watched it happen in real time. There was a face on my basement camera that I didn't recognize. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I was lying in bed scrolling through the live feeds on my security app when I saw it. Just a pale, round shape hovering near the bottom of the stairs, barely visible in the infrared. I live alone in a ranch-style house outside of Lebanon, Tennessee. It sits on about half an acre at the end of a gravel road. No streetlights. The nearest neighbor is a quarter mile through a tree line. I'd installed 4 cameras after a string of car break-ins in the area. One on the front porch, one on the back deck, one in the driveway, and one in the basement near the utility entrance. That last one was an afterthought. The basement has an exterior door that I almost never use. It's old and the lock is flimsy, but I'd put a deadbolt on it and figured that was enough. When I first saw the shape on the camera, I thought it was a glitch. The basement is unfinished, just concrete and exposed pipes, and the camera picks up shadows and cobwebs all the time. I stared at the feed for about 10 seconds. The shape didn't move. I zoomed in on my phone. It wasn't a shadow. It was a person, standing at the base of the stairs, looking up toward the door that leads into my kitchen. My body went cold. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The basement was directly below me. I was lying in bed maybe 30 feet from whoever was down there. I pulled up the other cameras. Front porch, nothing. Driveway, nothing. Back deck, nothing. No car I didn't recognize. No movement anywhere outside. Whoever this was had come in through the basement door and was already inside. I grabbed the pistol I keep in my nightstand and called 911. I whispered. I told them someone was in my house. They said they were sending a unit. I stayed on the line and kept watching the camera. For 6 minutes, the figure didn't move, just stood there, staring up the stairs. Then slowly, they turned and walked back toward the utility entrance. I heard the faintest creak of the exterior door. On the back deck camera, I saw a figure walk across my yard toward the tree line. They were wearing dark clothes, no shoes, and they moved slowly, almost casually, like they had nowhere to be. The deputies arrived about 12 minutes later. They checked the basement. The exterior door was closed, but the deadbolt was unlocked from the inside. There were muddy footprints on the concrete floor. One of the deputies said it looked like someone had been down there for a while, based on the scuff marks. He pointed to a spot near the water heater, where the dust on the floor had been disturbed in a pattern consistent with someone sitting or lying down. I asked what he meant by a while. He said it was hard to say. Could have been hours, could have been longer. I went back through my camera footage the next day. The motion-activated recordings only saved 30-second clips, and the basement camera had poor coverage near the exterior door itself. But I found something from 3 nights earlier, a clip recorded at 3:15 a.m. showing the same shape at the bottom of the stairs. Same position, same angle, looking up. 3 nights. They had been coming into my basement for at least 3 nights before I noticed. Maybe longer. The camera only records when it detects motion. If they had stayed still enough near the door, it might never have triggered. I replaced every lock in the house. I added 2 more cameras. I installed a motion sensor alarm on the basement door. But there's one detail I haven't been able to get past. When I reviewed the footage from the night I caught them, I watched the moment they turned to leave over and over again. Right before they walked away from the stairs, they looked directly into the camera. They paused for just a second, and then they left. They knew the camera was there. They'd known the entire time. That one stays with me. The idea of someone watching you through your own home, deciding when to come and go. But the next story involves someone who didn't just come in quietly. They came prepared. I woke up because my dog was growling, and Baxter never growls. He's a 9-year-old golden retriever who has never shown aggression toward anything in his life. But that night, he was standing at the foot of my bed, body rigid, ears flat, staring at the bedroom door with a low, guttural sound I'd never heard him make. It was just after 1 a.m. The house was dark and silent, except for the sound of the wind outside. I live in a 2-story house in a residential neighborhood in Katy, Texas, just west of Houston. My wife was out of town for work, My 2 kids were staying with her parents for the week. I was alone with the dog. I sat up and listened. At first, nothing. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping sound coming from downstairs. It wasn't knocking. It was more like someone running their fingers along a surface. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Baxter's growl got louder. I grabbed my phone and checked my Ring camera on the front porch. Nothing. No one there. I checked the backyard camera. The motion light hadn't been triggered. Everything looked normal. The tapping stopped. I waited. Then I heard a new sound. The creak of the 3rd step on my staircase. I know that creak. I've heard it 10,000 times. My kids jump on that step specifically because of the sound it makes. Someone was on my stairs. I moved faster than I've ever moved. I went to my closet and grabbed my shotgun. I racked it loud enough that they would have heard it from anywhere in the house. Then I positioned myself beside the bedroom door, which I'd closed and locked. Silence, total silence. Even Baxter had gone quiet. He was behind me now, pressed against my leg. I heard the 4th step creak, then the 5th. They were still coming up. I called 911. The dispatcher asked me to describe the situation. I told her someone was inside my home and coming up the stairs. She said units were on the way. She asked if I had a weapon. I said yes. She told me to stay in the room. Then the footsteps stopped. I could hear breathing on the other side of my bedroom door. Not heavy breathing, calm breathing. Someone was standing right there. Baxter started whimpering. I kept the shotgun aimed at the door. My hands were shaking, but I had my finger ready. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The breathing stopped. Then I heard them go back down the stairs. Slowly, 1 step at a time. No rush. The back door opened and closed. The motion light in the backyard finally triggered. And on the camera, I saw a man walking across my lawn toward the fence. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. He climbed over my fence and disappeared into the alley. Police arrived 7 minutes later. They found that my back door had been jimmied open with a pry bar. The lock frame was splintered. They found a small backpack in my living room that didn't belong to me. Inside was a roll of duct tape, zip ties, a box cutter, and a ski mask. I need you to understand what that means. That wasn't a burglary kit. Nothing in that bag was for stealing anything. Whoever came into my house that night came prepared for something else entirely. And they had climbed the stairs calmly, knowing I was up there. The police took the bag as evidence. They pulled prints. As far as I know, no match was ever found. No arrest was ever made. I think about the timing constantly. My wife was gone. My kids were gone. The house was dark and should have been empty looking. But I was home. I was the one variable they didn't account for. Or maybe they did. The part that haunts me most is the breathing at the door. They had heard me rack the shotgun. They knew I was armed and waiting. And they still came up the stairs. They still stood outside that door and listened. Whatever they were deciding in that moment, I don't want to know what tipped the scale. I don't think I need to explain why that one is so disturbing. What was in that bag tells you everything. But this last story, this is the one that's been keeping me up since I read it. It involves a child. And I'll just say, always listen to your kids. My daughter told me the nice man had been in her room again, and I felt something break inside my chest. She said it the same way she'd tell me about a dream. Casual, like it was normal. She was 4 years old. We lived in a single-story house in a quiet suburb of Raleigh, North Carolina. Magnolia Street, the kind of neighborhood where people left their garage doors open during the day and waved when you drove past. My wife and I had moved there the year before because it felt safe. Our daughter's bedroom was at the back of the house, next to the bathroom, with a window that faced the backyard. The first time she mentioned the man, I thought it was an imaginary friend. She said he was nice and that he watched her sleep. She said he smelled funny. I told my wife about it, and we both agreed it was just a kid thing. Preschoolers say strange things, but she kept bringing it up. Every few days, always in the morning. The nice man was here last night. He sat on the floor. He was by the window. It was always at night. It was always in her room. After the 4th or 5th time, I started checking her room every night before bed. Window locked, closet empty, under the bed clear. I checked the whole house, every door, every window. Everything was always secure. Then one morning, my wife found something. A footprint in the flower bed outside our daughter's window. A boot print in the soft dirt, pressed deep like someone had been standing there for a while. My wife called me at work, and her voice was shaking. I came home and looked at it. One clear print, adult-sized, pointed toward the window. I checked the window. It was locked. I checked the screen. It was intact. I checked the frame and found scratches on the exterior latch. Thin, precise marks like someone had used a flathead screwdriver on it. I installed a camera that afternoon, a small wireless unit pointed at her window from the fence post. I also put one in the hallway inside the house. I didn't tell my daughter about any of it. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking the feeds on my phone. Nothing happened for 3 nights. On the 4th night at 2:38 a.m., the exterior camera triggered. A man was standing at my daughter's window. He was average height, thin build, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He stood completely still for over a minute, just looking in through the glass. Then he crouched down and did something to the window latch with a small tool. The window didn't open. I had added a secondary lock that afternoon. He tried for about 30 seconds. Then he stood up, looked directly at the camera for a moment and walked away. He went around the side of the house and through the gate to the front yard. I lost him on camera after that. I called the police immediately. They came out, took the footage, filed a report. They increased patrols on our street. I went through the camera's stored clips and discovered it had been triggered twice before in the previous week. Clips I hadn't checked because I'd only just installed it. Both clips showed the same man, same position, same window. In one of the clips, the window was open about 4 inches. 4 inches. My daughter's window had been open, and a man had been standing right there. I don't know if he reached inside. I don't know if he came inside. But my daughter had been telling me for weeks that a man visited her at night, and I hadn't believed her. We moved out within 2 weeks. We stayed with my wife's parents until we found a new place across town. I sent the footage to every local news station and neighborhood group. The police said they were investigating, but I never heard anything definitive. What I keep coming back to is the timeline. My daughter first mentioned the nice man almost 6 weeks before I installed that camera. That means he had been coming to her window, possibly entering her room, for over a month before I took it seriously. She told me, and I didn't listen. She told me over and over, and I chalked it up to imagination. We're in a new house now. Cameras on every window. Alarm system. Motion lights. My daughter sleeps in the room closest to ours. She hasn't mentioned the man since we moved, but last week, she said something that made my blood stop. She said she had a dream about him. She said in the dream, he told her he knew where she was now. She's 4. She doesn't know what that means, but I do. That's going to be it for tonight. Lock your doors, check your windows, and if someone in your house tells you something feels wrong, listen to them.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.